I am.
Oh, just click the little eye.
There we go. Okay. I am new to streaming process.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, I'm Katie Wood.
Try not to block
Whoa.
everyone there. There we go.
Whoa. There we go. There we go. All right. I'm Katie Wood.
I'm John Bearden.
I'm Alessandro Kitchener.
And today on the stream, we're sharing some of the earliest prototypes of Island Time VR. It's the first time we've ever shared these outside of the studio, and we're really excited to show you where the ideas came from and how they basically evolved over time. So just kind of gonna jump right in
Cool.
and start with the very basic, kind of the pitch
I will,
build we
I will
made.
be your VR model for today. So let me get the first one started here.
But while that's going on, I guess we can go ahead and start with the question, what was the initial inspiration for Island Time? And that can be Alessandro's answer, because he
Sure.
came up with the original pitch.
Well, I pitched it to flight school about a year ago. So it actually started like 2 years ago, where we essentially had some downtime, and we were tasked with creating a VR prototype, just something to kind of show people what is VR and get them interested and hopefully bring in some clients. And it became a thing where we were trying to think of something unique, something that wasn't just a shooter. Not that there's anything wrong with shooters, but just trying to come up with a unique concept, and this is what we ended up with. This actually, though, was a prototype we made about a year ago for just an initial proof of concept for Island Time. At the time was called, I think we called it Tiny Survivor. So we just had the basic mechanics here. As you can see, very, very buggy. But
There you
you
start.
can see,
I got my fire starter.
yeah, so this there was no crafting yet. There was no crafting, there was no Carl, there was
Stunts. Oh,
like,
you're picking up the
yeah,
same rock over and over
very
again.
very
No.
minimal art. Oh,
And
very
there's
buggy.
a palm tree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a palm tree.
And you
This is
can
what
get-
you call a gray box prototype in
Yeah.
the industry.
It's okay. I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm just having fun.
Uh-huh. So yeah, and then the rocks just, I think, respawn forever.
Yeah. So that was
There
kind
should
of.
be a stick somewhere, right?
I don't know. This is the earliest one I found, but
I do not see
Oh,
a
this
stick.
is a really, really old one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this was before okay. We did eventually put a stick in there that you could spear some fish with. And you can knock a coconut down if you hit it with a rock.
Ooh, okay. Challenge.
space rock.
Oh.
What if this was the whole
I'm
game?
really bad at it.
Yeah, so this was our 1 day gray box prototype.
So you might have already said it, but was that kind of using this as a basis? Did you have an initial elevator pitch for Island Time that you kind of drafted and
I-
brought to the heads up here?
Yeah, well, the main thing was let's try and use the restrictions of VR to create the mechanics instead of try to work around the restrictions of VR. So the whole thing was, okay, let's put you in an island that you can just walk around and try and survive on. I guess that's longer than an elevator pitch. That's a long elevator ride. But the elevator pitch would probably be survive on a tiny island
So
in
was this
VR.
was the circle here your mechanic as far as like for the watch that eventually becomes like your health meter and things like that?
Yeah, that's what eventually became the watch. I guess it just restarts now. But yeah, the original, I think when it was first pitched, the idea was like that was sort of your GPS watch, and it was telling you how long until a boat would be there to rescue you. And if you lived long enough, the boat would eventually show up and rescue you or take you to the next level or some other such achievement.
How quickly do you think we made this first prototype?
This, I think this is like some sort of interim pre-prototype thing, but I mean, that was a day of work.
Yeah.
It was myself, you, and Angelica, and Troy Tavis, aka the Triceratops, who is no longer at Flight School Studio, but we miss him dearly.
And
Or I
then-
do.
Yeah, no, we do too. We do too. Good, now I feel weird. So, what was the goal of this first prototype? Was it simply to prove out kind of the very, very basic idea of island time? Like, would the mechanic work, or would being on an island work, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera?
I mean, I'd say like 90% of it was just the first thing really was like, how small do we have to make an island for you to just be able to walk around it in VR? And is it fun to just pick up stuff and start fires with rocks and knock down coconuts and catch fish? And I think we did eventually prove that.
How close do you think these original dimensions are to like the final area?
That's probably a lot bigger because we had originally built it for Vive, so you would have had a little bit more freedom of movement, like in a 10 by 10 space. And I remember foolishly saying, this should only be on Vive, so you can walk around the whole island, and we'll have this big island, and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, that's just not viable to say only for Vive, just because, you know, we had some lofty ideas about play space.
So did that transform the idea? I'm sure we'll see in later versions, but how, okay, maybe you can't move like with Vive. Now do we have to change up the design to accommodate that?
Oh yeah, that made
Yeah.
a big difference. At some point when we were saying like PlayStation VR and Oculus is what we should be shooting for as well, one of the biggest things was like, okay, most games on those platforms try to keep you at like a front 180. So in our original pitch build, like there was stuff all around you. You had to turn around and pick things up. But we had to kind of retool it to be like, okay,
Right.
most stuff is like in this sort of a cone. Let me. Oh wait, you probably can't see. Probably about this.
Nope.
Looks like
Probably
we're gonna
about
go
this
hug
wide.
John.
Probably about this wide. Can you see me on the stream? It's
There
like
you go.
this
I'll move
wide.
over. There we go.
Probably about that much. So that meant like, okay, what can we get rid of? What do we need to put there to make it feel like it's still a big space, but you can't actually go over there? And surprisingly enough, just having water makes people not want to walk out of that play space. Even though you know that it's not real water, you don't want to go and step in it.
Right.
Like, no one ever does that unless they're, you know, messing around and they're like, hey, I'm gonna break your game. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not a natural instinct to do that.
And that kind of helped Island Time just automatically with
Yeah.
the restrictions of like, hey, we've built this quote unquote lore, and everyone instinctively
Yeah.
is right on board for it, which is really nice.
Exactly. Like, it's pretty amazing how much you can trick people's brains
Yeah.
in VR. Even though everyone says it doesn't work on them, on some level it does.
I think that's pretty universal. I think everyone's going to have a little bit of change in their perspective as soon as you put them in a new environment.
Yeah. And we had similar things where we had some environment where you were on a bridge. No one would ever step off the bridge, even though it was maybe a fifth of your play space. You would only have to take like a step and you'd be off of it, but no one would ever take that step.
We want to try a different.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
try a
this
different
one
one.
seems is
It's-
pretty minimal.
It's been fully explored, but it is cool to show that like this is how simple it can be at the start.
Yeah.
If you're trying to come up with an idea or a pitch or exploration, it can be just this bare bones gray box style
Yeah.
to an extent, and then you
Oh,
can
yeah.
start building from there, which is pretty cool. So next up is going to be kind of what we nicknamed proof of concept tech, although it's kind of pre-alpha more than anything. You start to see a few more art assets get in there, like the very basic proxy stuff, and you'll get a little bit more gameplay, I think. And these are very old, so I'm trying to remember exactly what functions and what doesn't. But I
Yeah.
guess John will find that out as he
Oh
plays.
yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff. I think this was the build that we had shown to basically get the project greenlit. We had like I want to say a few weeks, maybe a month to build something. Yeah, see, there's our nice little proxy, Carl,
Yeah.
handing you a bottle.
Carl Gen 1.
Yeah. So this was I believe before we even had Ruby. So we have no unifying concept art for this, but here we brought in the crafting. And this was when we actually had like a dedicated team to put together a demo and say, you know, here's what it can be. Do we want to go forward and make this into a full thing?
Mhm.
And yeah, see, you can just eat fish. I think the original concept was you could eat a raw fish and it wouldn't give you very much health, but if you cooked it, it would give you some more.
So those are the rocks we saw in the pitch phase.
Yeah.
Definitely
Rocks.
polished up a little bit.
Yep.
And now we have fish, which Alessandra just mentioned, the sticks, which were missing even from the pitch version, although there was probably a later pitch version that had some sticks.
Probably not, because in the pitch there wasn't crafting, and there's a nice piece of like cooked salmon fillet
Yeah.
somehow, or
Beautiful fillet.
or like a swai fillet. And there's a sleeping shark in the background, taking a little nap.
So, what were the big takeaways from playing and showing the team this prototype?
You mean like what were like the main goals?
I
of
guess,
it?
like, after it's been played, like, what were you thinking in terms of going forward? Like, oh, does the bottle system work, for example? I know we had
Scratch that,
messages in
yeah.
a bottle.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, you died. There's no real indication. So, alright. Yeah, I think what we learned from this one was we need to make the island even tinier. That was something like we kept on fighting with for a long time. Like, this island has to keep getting tinier and tinier and tinier for you to be able to actually interact with everything. Yeah, and the message in a bottle system too was something that sounded really cool on paper, and we were all really
Paper.
excited about.
Hey.
It sounded good on parchment, and something we were all really excited about and thought it would be a really neat way to tutorialize it, but eventually it became way too cumbersome, and let me get around John a little bit. It became it's sort of a problem child where it was like,
Oops.
how are you going to do a tutorial about picking stuff up that involves picking stuff up?
Yeah, that's true.
So it became too much of a hassle to. It wasn't worth all the problems that came along with it.
Right.
Although it was a cool idea in theory, and what came out of that was our little mascot Carl, who becomes your new tutorial system.
Yeah, because he used to hand you. We always knew we wanted a crab, right?
Yeah.
As a little mascot.
Well, initially I had said maybe in later levels there can be a crab that you have to catch, and he's just harder to catch than a fish,
cool.
and you just eat him. But that became, everyone just said, "Oh my God, you monster! Look at how cute the art for the crab is, and you want to eat him." So he became our little mascot instead.
And then we had him handing you. He always, when he became the mascot, he was always going to speak, right? But then we wanted him to hand bottles. But then we thought, oh, we'll condense it down into him telling you.
Yeah. It became a thing where we kept on going back and forth and trying to find some sort of middle ground where it was like, we want the messages in the bottle because it's a neat idea. It's islandy.
Yeah.
It's survivor-y. But we also want Carl to talk about things more specific, like call things out or like point when a seagull's on the way or something like that.
Yeah.
But then it was like, it became a little wishy-washy and we had to pick one or the other. And it's still a demo, so it's still really buggy.
Yeah.
But I think it showed a lot more of the mechanics in a much more interesting way. It's not quite as fast-paced as the actual build, which I think was another takeaway, where it's like, it feels kind of slow. Like, there's this interesting stuff to do, but there's not a lot of blockers, there's not a lot of antagonistic forces, so
Yeah.
you're just kind of hanging out, catching fish, and sort of just chilling.
Yeah.
So now it looks like
It's your
the other
tongue. Yeah. Ruby had a comment. She says, old Carl looks kind of indifferent, like he doesn't care, but the new Carl cares about you too much. Was that, was there a personality that you kind of had in mind from the beginning with Carl, of like he's going to be a happy-go-lucky, optimistic character, or did that happen later on?
Oh, I can't take any credit for Carl
Yeah.
or any of that stuff. I'm
Yeah.
not going to pretend that I came up with any of the Carl stuff.
Mhm.
That was all Adam Volker, our creative
Oh, I
director.
gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, I think that's did sort of evolve from this thing, right? Where it was like, step one, Carl was something to eat. Step two,
Yeah.
Carl becomes a helper, and then it's sort of like, okay, well, what kind of directions could we go with a little crab that wants to help you? Is he
Right.
gonna be excited about life and wanting to help you, or is he kind of like, oh, okay, here's another guy on the island, here's
Kind
your
of a-
message. And I think that's sort of what we got with this version of Carl, where he's just kind of like, all right, here's your message, get out of my face, I'm going back in my crab house.
Yeah. Sort of a Sebastian grumpy crab,
Yeah.
I guess. We took him a different direction. Did we always know that Island Time was going to be kind of funny and fun, lighthearted, or was it
Yeah.
more serious of a like survival?
I think the tone was always supposed to be goofy,
Mm-hmm.
just because, I mean, that's just how we all are who
Yeah.
worked on it.
Yeah.
I know I don't take a whole lot of anything seriously, so what if we had any, I think we might have had some shortcuts to activate I'm worried I'm gonna break the stream, activate the shark.
Since it's a build, I don't know if you can do any command. Maybe you can.
No, maybe not. Oh yeah, there's a seagull.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you go, there's that seagull.
You kept it with you
Tony-
this whole time, these commands.
Yeah, Tony Jimenez made that seagull. He was a artist who also he was in the commercial department, which is now Attack Plan. Make sure you check them out.
Yeah, go attack.
Nice
Land.
plug.
So
So this
yeah, now there's also that fun
Oh, there
little
we go.
floaty fish. Yeah, so the seagull I think originally was just like an ambient creature
Oh,
that you
okay.
could eat if
Yeah.
you were really good at throwing rocks.
He just sort of would swoop in and then. Oh,
Yeah,
you
he
can
would
eat
just-
him. Yeah, okay.
you could eat him,
Okay.
and this was sort of when I think this is when we started to go the direction of having more of a story mode,
Yeah.
and just infinite play.
And that's definitely something that's evolved over time. We started with a story mode, I guess,
Mhm.
as kind of like, oh, we'll do a story mode, and it'll be like you survive a day, and then the next day is different things happen, and then you're trying to
Yeah.
survive so many days to the end of the story.
Yeah, I think the pitch was like a score attack type thing. I don't really remember. It was either a score attack or just like, it was because it was originally just like a demo, right? It was like a
Mhm.
5-minute thing, like, okay, you survived, here comes the boat, now next person can play it.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it did eventually become sort of a story mode thing where all this wacky stuff would happen as you went on.
And that changed later. You'll see that in the next build. I think the story mode is there in the next build we're gonna look at, but that eventually evolved to where it just became an infinite survival style game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds like
Sort
we
of
want to take a
roguelike.
look at the next mode then.
Yeah, that was a segue, John.
That was a nice segue. Thank you, Katie.
Is there any more chat stuff?
We have a few
You
comments.
could fill some
No
fill some
questions
time.
yet. So if you
Oh,
do have any
what?
questions, though,
Feel free to ask questions outside of Island Time.
yeah, for
Maybe parenting questions.
Oh,
I've
wow.
managed to keep a child alive for 3 whole months now.
Congratulations.
So maybe I should start a blog. Or embarrassing personal questions, whatever. I'm here for you. Don't forget to smash that like button.
Were there any literary influences for Carl?
Again, I can't take any credit for Carl. But
That's
I'm
the
gonna,
wrong question.
But I'm gonna guess. Yeah, that was the only wrong question. This is level 1 of our story mode. This is a fun one.
Carl actually has a voice now.
Yes, there's our placeholder voice. Can the stream hear that, or is that?
I believe they can.
This was our primitive tutorial telling you what buttons to press. Yeah.
This was in place of the message in a bottle system. It's
Yes.
just going to flash up and show you what to do.
Totes.
Yeah. And I think in Island Time proper, I'm trying to remember, how do we convey that? I guess Carl just tells you, right?
He just tells you stuff. Yeah, he just tells you stuff now. So this has some art from our artist Brandon Fricks.
Oh yeah.
So it's got some actual art. I think, this actually has art based on Ruby's concept art. Back to literary references for Carl. I'm trying to think of something funny. I'm gonna say Garfield. For the original Carl, he was very Garfield.
And then,
Huh?
so you said this was day 1 of story mode, which to clarify, it did not, oh no, the coconuts are, oh there they go.
Yeah, no, they will knock down. You just have to hit them real hard or hit them a bunch.
So to clarify, the story mode did not end up in the final version of Island Time, but
Yeah.
maybe we should walk through kind of like that whole process a little bit more.
Sure, maybe it'll be DLC one day.
Yeah.
Check it out. IslandTimeVR.com. So it sort of evolved into this story mode thing where we had said, okay, I think it ended up being like, oh, you died, John. Come on, man. How did you die on the tutorial level? This was our biggest problem though, I think, in our story mode type stuff was conveying what you were supposed to do to the player. He won't let you pick anything up until he does the tutorial. That was So we tried all kinds of wacky stuff to force you to learn how to play before we would even let you do anything.
So with story mode, it goes, and I think I explained it earlier, it was like day 1, day 2, day
Sorry,
3. No,
I got
you're fine.
distracted.
You're fine. There's so much going on, and there's even a question I want to ask you real fast too, but I'll get back to that in a second. So hold on, Ruby, it's a great question. But but basically, so we started out that way, and then you mentioned it was a little bit tougher because people, instead of like infinite survival style where, hey, you could die in 2 seconds, 2 minutes, you'll get another quick shot at it.
Yeah.
It really didn't change much here because it was more and different content the farther you got, I guess, and if you died immediately, you'd have to replay certain
Yeah.
things. It got to be a little tricky.
See, and John's trying to play it like the survival mode where he's storing stuff up.
Oh.
You could
I mean,
break open a coconut
and also
or
just
maybe
thinking of
catch a
different
fish
goals for
with a
each
break.
day. It became just this whole thing where it's like it slowed it all down. It slowed down the pace of the game because it's like you're introducing one new mechanic each day, which was anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes of surviving, which doesn't sound like a long time, but in Island Time, it's a long time.
Yeah, especially in the current version.
Yeah, and if you were really good at it, it would become boring because you would just catch all the fish at the beginning, store them all up, and then hope a seagull doesn't steal it all. So it didn't really showcase the mechanics as well as they could have been. And eventually we realized that we all kind of clung to it. Mostly me, because we did so much work on making it a story mode thing, we really clung to it.
And it is a great idea, and if we had
You don't have to be polite about it, Katie.
no, it really, I think it's a cool idea. We had some cool, along with the story mode, had some cool different spurring off ideas. That's not the right way to word that, but
Yeah.
different offshoot ideas that went along with story stuff. And so if we did do any sort of DLC content in the future, or sequel to Island Time, I don't know, that's
Yeah.
definitely in the future, but we
It seems
could maybe
broken.
revisit something like that. So, but it eventually worked its way out of our development and became just an infinite survival, and that's the only mode there is. And we found the fun in that infinite survival really rather quickly through playtesting, that it found a lot more fun in groups as like I guess a game showy type environment.
I think
Yeah.
someone has coined it that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and it was still good that we did the story mode stuff, because like you said, that did lead to all, because it was like, we have to think of mechanics that can stretch this out to a story mode. We ended up coming up with lots of really cool stuff that we ended up putting in the final game.
mhm. Yeah, we found it was typical game design really. Found new ways to kind of develop those ideas to go along with the new mode, and how do we filter these ideas down and make them more suited to our new purpose. And so we kept a lot of the fun things in there that we had, like Mr. Siegel. He was a little bit more, I think, mobile maybe in the story one, but now he has a distinct purpose which lets the player learn what he does and how to address him in the future. And so
Now can we restart? Restart it.
What's that?
Can we restart this? It looks like it's broken.
yeah. We're gonna restart it real fast.
Being really professional.
So I'll pose a question since I was so busy playing there.
Hold on, Ruby had a question.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Oh
Ruby.
yeah, I'm sorry. I do have a couple quick questions, so hold on to yours, John, real fast. But,
Okay.
all right, Ruby's was, do you think Carl will be a good husband for your daughter? He's really nice and helpful. That's Ruby's question.
Carl is a crab.
Yeah.
I think we still have a long way to go
So,
before crab
yeah, I
human
don't-
relationships are accepted.
Yeah, I don't know if that's legal in any state, so I'm gonna say no.
Alright,
No.
definitive.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
And then from Facebook, from Brandon Oldenburg, we have a question. What kind of input did you get from Greg that made it into the game? And
Oh, your
for
name's
those of you
still
who do
working.
not know,
He's
Greg
gonna pick up his
Miller,
watch.
correct? Miller?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I didn't butcher that.
From Kinda Funny.
From Kinda Funny Games.
Games.
Yeah. He came in and was absolutely amazing, and he did our final dub for Carl the Crab, and really basically solidified his personality for us. We already had a direction, but he just like took it to the next final level, and he was amazing. And so he came into the studio and he recorded and gave some input for the game. And I know that one was the big one. Alessandro wasn't really there that day.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was there that day.
Yeah,
I
but
wasn't,
just not-
I was off
yeah.
the project.
Not in the
so-
recording booth, yeah, we'd already sort of shifted around as it was going into more post-production stuff. But anyway, he definitely had some feedback in terms of trophies. That was something we have always kind of had issue with, I guess, quote unquote. Manifest 99, our previous project, we didn't have any trophies. We elected not to because it was mainly a narrative experience more than a game. There was interactivity, but it's pretty linear and you just go through it. And we didn't know if it was necessary to have trophies in that case. And then we found out later, no, we should have had trophies probably, because there's some big fans of trophies out there. And so he came in, we already had trophies for Island Time, but he came in, oh yeah, we should talk about that. He came in and basically recommended that we should qualify for platinum trophies and that this game would be great for that. And so we went back and retooled it and came up with some new trophy type challenges, and we added, of course, a platinum trophy to Island Time. So there will be trophies and there will be more trophies thanks to Greg. So Greg gave some great advice there. And now, John, if you still remember it, you said you had a question.
So I was just going back to the what you guys are talking about with the story mode, and kind of where Island Time is now. How would you, as designers, how would you guys approach trying to get the story back in, keeping the gameplay that we have with the current Island Time?
Well, I think that our new Carl might have solved one of our biggest problems with the story mode of just clarity.
Take him off! Get him out of here!
Yeah, he used to just grab the fish right off your spear. Yeah, I think the main thing was just clarity about what you're supposed to do in each level. Maybe have different goals besides just surviving X amount of time. Like, you can't get off this island until you do X action. So like maybe building a radio to try and communicate, and do something a little more interesting with it instead of just surviving over and over again, which is still fun. But when it's more obvious that you're doing the same thing when it's in like a level-based format, and I think it started to wear on people. We have a backstory.
Watch out for that guy. He's a
What did the team learn from this build again? Yeah, as we go through, we kind of talked about what we learned from the previous prototype. What did we sort of learn from this one? I think there was a little bit more iteration after this, and then we made the big change over to infinite survival and not story mode after this. So
Yeah, this one's mid-production, I want to say, like mid-late production based on the art. So
I
this
think it was September, if I remember right, pulling it, but maybe I'm off.
That feels like a million years ago.
It
now,
does.
But in game development time, that's not long.
No, yeah.
I think this was another one where we just
Ooh.
there was a thing that we I think there was a thing that we sort of refused to learn from a lot of these, where it was like the level-based stuff maybe isn't where it needs to go, because it was a lot of like really grabbing at like, how do we make this work? How do we make this work? How do we make this work? Instead of focusing on what actually made it fun and trying to get all those elements and make a game out of that, instead of trying to force our game to be something that maybe it wasn't, it didn't really fit. And I think this was a step in learning that.
Yeah. Was there, I guess, ever a point or any sort of real indication of like, this game will make a good VR game and it's fun, we found the fun? Was there ever a point that you felt that, or was it just sort of like as we went along, we got good feedback and that meant it was good, or?
Yeah, I think in that last demo, as rudimentary as it was, I think when people played that and there was some art in it,
Yeah.
and people could kind of get it, that's when people went, all right, like I see it, I get it, I know what I can do in this and where it can go.
Yeah.
This is a fun VR game. It sort of takes a lot of elements from, I don't want to say it takes elements from, but like it's using a lot of proven VR concepts from other successful products and sort of putting that in the context, in a unique context where it's a little more gamey and a little less mess around.
Right. We have another Ruby question. Thank you, Ruby. If there's one more character you would like to add to the game, what kind of character would you add and why?
Like an actual voiced character?
I don't know. I guess anything.
Uh,
Could be like the Seagull, where he doesn't talk, but he's sort of a character, or it could be like another Carl.
We, a long time ago, had the idea, I don't know if this is supposed to be like a save it for DLC character, but I'm gonna bring it up because no one told me not to. A second survivor on another island who would be your rival. See how there's a tiny island over there.
Oh.
So part of the pitch concept. See, thank you, John. That's my assistant, John, in here, pointing it out. There was going to be another survivor on that island. I think this was Ron Harbin's idea. I don't want to leave people out and pretend like I'm some sort of auteur who came up with this whole thing and everyone else just sat around. Where it was just, you would both be competing for resources, and
Yeah.
we sort of convey the character of that survivor in funny, wordless ways, where he would just kind of sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown or
Oh,
something,
yeah,
and like
yeah.
flip you off from his island. I almost did it, but then I remembered.
Keep it family friendly.
Keep it family
Whoa.
friendly.
Family
It's
friendly.
a family friendly VR game. Yeah, so you'd be competing for the resources, and that was like a fun little mechanic, but
Yes.
that's something that kind of went away. But I think that would be a cool thing if we had your rival survivor.
That would be a lot of fun. You could maybe cook the seagull before the seagull got to you, or
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
or maybe there'd just be stuff in the middle that you were both competing to get to with.
yeah.
Ooh, I almost said spoilers for tools you can make.
Oh yeah.
With a special
we didn't
tool.
even talk about it.
With a
Eva.
special tool you could make, you might be able to reach further out and get those, and he might try and beat you to it in some way.
So would it be Ruby again? Thank you. Or would it be multiplayer, or would that just be an AI character out there that's competing with you?
We pitched it as an AI thing. I mean, I don't know if that is enough of an interesting thing to merit adding another player.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess though, like, who doesn't like to compete with other people and ruin their island time playthrough?
Yeah. He could send you messages in a bottle.
Yeah, that was the thing too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like he'd throw out a message in a bottle and it would just say something crass.
Rude.
Yeah.
Versus you.
Yeah, like those squiggly lines you see in cartoons when
Oh,
someone's
yeah.
cussing. Or like how Woodstock talks in a speech bubble. A lot of Charlie Brown references today
Yeah.
for some reason.
You find out it's just Charlie Brown.
Oh my god.
Where has he
And
been?
then we get sued.
Yeah, exactly. And then it doesn't go very well for us later on. So that was a good point, because we definitely can get in a little deeper now that we're at basically our last demo for now. But what tools, not very specific, but kind of the design process behind, like how many, or like did we cut some, did they evolve when we had Carl in there and all kinds of stuff?
Oh yeah, there were some that were cut for sure. Mainly because they were like really specific to story mode.
Oh,
Like
okay,
we
yeah.
had, I don't know if we're ever gonna like release this in some other fashion. But we had like a flare gun you would use to signal a plane, so that, because we didn't have the story mode, we didn't need that. So
Right.
mostly things that were incidental to story mode, or were tools that already did what tools we made did,
Mhm.
but just less efficiently,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of funny. But the redundancy frustrated people.
Yeah.
Where they were like, well, what did I bother making this for if it just does the same thing as a spear? So yeah, there was things like that got cut.
Yeah, and we got into that, no spoilers, but there are some fun things in the game with tools, not going to go into specifics, and we played in a little bit into that idea of like, it's funny, it's lighthearted, so maybe there's some jokes in there
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
nature, but, yeah,
Like a
we won't
few
say what
rubber
makes what.
duckies or
Yeah, rubber duckies.
yeah, you saw some rubber duckies over there.
Yeah, rubber
Those
duckies.
might be in the main game. You'll have to play it to find out.
Yay. And then
Am
we
I not
have,
supposed to be looking at the camera? Am I supposed to like make this feel like natural?
I don't
We're having a
know.
discussion.
I don't know.
I've been looking at the camera the whole time, and I've realized maybe that's
Well, we do have
bad live stream
audience
form.
participation, so I guess you're
Yeah,
making
I'm
eye
talking to you out
contact.
there,
Yeah.
America, and other countries that have internet.
You're opening the circle.
Yeah, I'm letting you guys into the live stream.
And Anders Jewell on Facebook says he's really excited for this game on PSVR. So thank you. That's awesome of you.
I'm excited that you will buy it on PSVR.
And so we have about.
I want to have a little talk here. That's
I'll
okay.
sit on
I'm going to stand
John's
back
been
here.
playing a
Okay.
lot, so it should
I'm going to
Yeah, maybe you need a
fan
rest.
off now.
Yeah.
do like a
Makes it-
fanning contamination chamber or
Yes.
whatever for
Yes.
Makes your
VR.
face hot.
So we have about 20 minutes left. We can probably just powwow, I
Okay.
guess,
Yeah,
about
let's
the
answer
game.
questions from the
Answer
fans.
questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any, we have some ourselves, but if anybody wants to ask anything, feel free to jump in.
I really want to play the real Island Time, but we can't do that today, though.
Oh, right, yeah. Island Time will be releasing spring 2018, and so there'll be more information later. I'll say this all at the end, too, but so we can't really show too much on that just yet. But you got to see kind of sort of a sneak preview with the early builds.
It's coming soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, so yeah, shark was something I was going to bring up, and how the shark sort of plays into. I don't know if that's a spoiler or anything for the game, but
Not
just
really.
how I guess it's his own character. She is her own character. I think it's a girl shark. It's named. She's named Anne. So.
Well, don't
But that's
assume the
that could
shark's
be a
gender.
more. Yeah, that could be
Yes.
Andrew
Yeah.
or Angelo.
We're never going to
Or-
move forward if we.
I know.
make these
I took
horrible.
2 steps back. I'm sorry, everyone. But so yeah, I guess talk about a little bit about the sharks mechanics or intention in the beginning. and-
Yeah, we had sort of a weird nebulous thing with the shark where we wanted there to be a shark that would scare away the fish, but then how you would counter the shark was a little bit, it wasn't intuitive. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. I feel like we could have combated this a little bit with a little bit art and a little bit better design, where essentially the shark was really like it acted like a dog. So you would throw a squeaky rubber ducky, as you saw in that first level, and then you would get the shark to go after the rubber duck, and then the fish would come back because they're not scared by the shark, and you catch the fish. But no one ever really figured that out when we did play testing, and it was another one of those things, like we held on to it as long as we could, like, well, what if we just tweaked this, what if we just did that, what if we, have Carl flat out tell you need to throw something to scare the shark, to get the shark to go away, but then people would just throw everything but the duck into the water and just like start tossing stuff. So it was one of these things where it's like, you know what, it just doesn't make any sense, so people aren't going to do it intuitively, so it's like, let's scrap it, have the shark do something else, and that's the final iteration of the shark in the game.
So that shark
Looking at
character
the
actually.
camera and pointing at
That shark character kind of actually reminds me of like the antlion from Half-Life 2. The whole where you had to have the little bait that you would throw out and send them to take out enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was a lot more of this like obvious thing where it was something you equipped, and like it was this weird. It visually looked like it was somehow connected to that,
Yeah.
and I think, I don't remember, but I think they showed in Half-Life 2, they were always really good about this, where they would show some sort of ambient thing where maybe someone else threw one or it dropped or something, and the antlions went to it. So you'd be like, oh, okay, now I have one of those and I can use it. And that's hard to do in VR because you typically don't have like an inventory system where something is called out as a usable item, because we like to like make it a physical thing in VR so that it's cool and you pick it all up. And I think having that in Island Time, I think didn't really fit what we were going for with you're just using everything that's around you in your immediate environment to survive.
Yeah. I think for that one, also just the whole training of the whole throwing and getting the shark to respawn would have been nicer to have like the idea of like a pure level of just teaching that mechanic, if that was going to be a mechanic.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was, it was, like each day was its own problem, and that day's problem was, here's a shark, deal with it, but everyone would just kind of be like, I don't know, I'm stabbing it, nothing's happening, I'm throwing rocks at it, nothing's happening,
Yeah.
this is stupid, your game's broken, throw the rubber duck. Okay, that worked. You had to tell me to do that though, because
Yeah.
it didn't make any sense. I mean, we wanted it to be a little bit nonsensical and wacky, but that took it a little too far where it was just nebulous.
I definitely think like challenges like that would be good if we do end up continuing on and maybe bring back the story mode and actually have a different version of that, is how we kind of revisit some of those mechanics, because yeah, it does still feel like something's there, and that idea of a new challenge every day being the progression, and then fitting it in still within that time frame of, or what Island Time is right now, which is that survive sort of thing, for a very short amount of time, so you have a short time span to figure out what the problem is, and then there's the repetition of you're always given the same tools, you got to figure out the problem, and maybe that sort of balance might have helped with the situations like that. But once again, if we ever get back to it.
Yeah, but I think the issue with that and with that whole day system, it became it didn't have that one. It didn't have the replay value that it does now, and two, it's sort of that like adventure game logic issue where I'm not solving the problem based on what I think makes sense. I'm solving it based on what do I think the developers want me to do here. Like, it's just this weird esoteric set of steps to get to the solution, not something organic. And that's a really tough thing to do when you make games, to try and make it feel like the player figured something out rather than you tell them, or they're just kind of guessing and then they randomly just happen to hit on that thing. Like I'm trying to think of a good like adventure game example where it doesn't make any sense. You somehow end up with the tool you got just by going and talking to 5 or 6 different people, and then you're like, okay, I guess now I have a magnifying glass that I use to burn an ant, and then the ant's friend gets mad and throws a rock at me. Now I have a rock, and I can use that rock to break this lock open.
It's very like King's Quest or
Yeah, exactly.
those kinds of games, I guess. But.
Yeah.
So it sort of ended up being like that, where it was just these list of things you did on each day, and then at the end you're like, okay, I just do those steps, and now I've finished the game. But now it's a lot more like organic, and it's like, okay, here's a bunch of stuff, use it to survive as long as you can, and you will be scored based on that.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot. I think we ended up with a much better game with that framework.
I have a couple questions from Facebook. Anders again asks, can I play endless, or is there some kind of ending?
There's not a story ending. Let's leave it at that.
All right.
It's
I
more
think
of a,
we've kind of described what it is, which is that
Yeah.
it is an endless sort of gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's sort of a roguelike type thing almost. I'd say it's roguelite. Or wait,
Yeah.
what's the difference between roguelike and roguelite? Roguelite is where you get to keep stuff, but roguelike is you completely. So it's roguelike.
And then David Gray Edwards asks, does anyone know what time it is? ... question.
Oh.
And it's island time.
It's island time.
Hey!
I don't know what you're going.
It is 10:48, sir.
Yeah. Don't you have a clock on your computer
And one thing.
or other device?
Yeah. Oh, we have a watch in the game, so I guess.
Yeah,
But it
that
doesn't
tells you.
tell.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you what time. I mean, it will tell you your island time,
Yeah.
as in how much time you were on the island without dying.
Whoa.
It works on 2 levels.
Yeah. Whoa. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
And
Props to Jen Caddick who came up with the
Oh.
title.
yeah, the title was something we had trouble settling
Oh
on.
yeah, that was
so.
something we were. Yeah. Let's not get into that. That could be a whole nother live
All the
stream
other variations.
about how long it took to get to a name.
And I guess back to your point, you guys were just discussing. Maybe you already said it. I was reading questions, but I guess one issue we were finding too is that when we have all these different tools and things on the island that have real world functions, they don't have just like one purpose. Typically, they have multiple things that you think you can do with something, and it just sort of starts to balloon out into like. When you add an item on the island, it's like, well, that item can interact with this item this way, or this one this way, or this one this way, and it just starts to spider web out. And so we had to really be careful about that, of course, making it too crazy. But then you want some of those interactions.
Yeah, and I think the final version has a lot of that too, to where we have like best uses of items, but you could also use them in other ways. So kind of like even in these early prototypes, we were showing that you could throw things to scare away the seagull. So, but what is the best thing? If you have a limited number of rocks, you obviously don't want to throw your rocks at them because then you're going to run out of rocks.
Right, exactly. So, and some of the crafting you can do for tools, like what would make most sense for you to be able to craft and what shouldn't you be able to probably put together. Or it's just a lot of discussion back and forth too on what created what, I think. So, and then I guess we have some of our own questions we could ask real fast while maybe some people are thinking about questions, but we have about 10 minutes left anyway, or more like 7 or whatever.
There were some more characters that we kind of didn't even get to see in these prototypes. That would be a great thing for like future content as well, whether it's a whole brand new game or DLC. But Lots
Oh,
of
yeah,
fish
the-
with character and personalities.
Yeah, we had a lot of different fish, and some of them, again, the mechanics were a little too. I keep saying the word nebulous. It was like my word of the day or something. They were opaque,
Ooh.
so people
Ooh.
couldn't really figure out what this fish did versus this fish, and why is this fish doing that and this fish doesn't, and everyone was just. By like day 8 in our story mode, there was like 4 or 5 different kinds of fish. They're all popping out at once, and everyone's just going but not in like the good way that you do now, where you're like you know how to solve it. Instead, it was just like there's all this stuff everywhere, and I'm confused.
Yeah, totally.
So we pruned it a little bit, and that's what we have now. Sometimes you have to kill your babies. That's a term.
I think it's
not
The fact that you announced you had a baby earlier is
No, that's a thing people
I think
say.
you just throw them
like,
away. I don't think you actually have to kill them.
You don't throw them. No, you don't throw them out with the bathwater.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes
Oh.
you have
kill
to
them.
kill your babies.
Okay.
There we go.
Not an actual physical baby,
I've
but
totally
like
been
your
doing it the
baby
wrong
of an
way.
idea. Yeah.
I've been doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, you keep the baby, but throw out the bathwater, not the
Okay.
other way around.
Okay.
And I guess this is more for Alessandro too, of like
It's my
going
office little
from
camera.
from pitch, because you just had this idea and then now it's blossomed into an actual PSVR title and Oculus Vive. I guess how has that felt just for you? I know that might be a little bit
That's
bit
very,
deep,
like,
This is
but
the Disneyland question.
yeah,
What
exactly.
is this?
Where are you going? I just it's probably something kind of unique that you pitch an idea and then it like happens. That's pretty cool. So I
Yeah, it was
just
pretty
thinking-
cool that we were allowed to do that, like to have an idea and then pitch it, and then it became a thing. That's pretty. I mean, I realized I was very monotone when I was about to say I'm really excited about it. No, I'm super pumped. It was just very. It's kind of surreal where it was like this was just like some rinky-dink little demo we made. And now it's a full thing, so it's really cool that that Flight School gave us the opportunity to do that, and hopefully we'll have more projects like this coming up.
And it's probably pretty cool seeing the growth too, just in this live stream a little bit. Of like,
Yeah.
Whoa! I can't. I even when I pulled the builds in for the live stream, and I was kind of blown away by like, oh my gosh, like these are so.
Yeah.
Like they're from a few months ago, but they're so
Yeah,
different.
It feels like an eternity ago, but it was really like it's the whole production of this thing has been less than a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fast for a game turnaround.
Yeah, especially one that's this great.
It's definitely go out and buy Island.
Go out and buy 2 copies
We're
of
not
it.
just we're not just saying that. It actually is a good game.
So we've kind of wrapped up here with everyone, but before we're going to show the trailer for Island Time VR, I got a few quick announcements. But so if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing at Flight School Studio, follow us on Twitter at Flight School HQ or Facebook at facebook.com/Flight School Studio. We also have an email newsletter, so you can sign up for it at islandtimevr.com. And if you're heading to South by Southwest, we'll be at the Gaming Expo March 15th through the 17th with a preview of Island Time in booth 2126. And just come say hi to us. We'll say hi back. We'll be giving away prizes to folks who survive the longest each day. Manifest 99 will also be on display at the Mashable Houses VR Bar March 9th through the 11th during South by Southwest. And finally, if you're stopping by Virtual Cinema at South by Southwest, our own Ryan Hartzell will be premiering a VR film, The Evolution of Testicles, in partnership with the Male Cancer Awareness Campaign and Oculus's VR for Good program. So, all right, that's it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah,
Smash that like button.
Island Time VR, woo. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Dear Diary, it's me, Carl, the crab. I write in you every day. Anyways, guess what? A new best friend showed up on the island. This one was creative. First day, sun's up. They're making stuff. Spears, sticks with logs on the end. Man, if they had a stick or a log, they were making stuff with sticks and logs. Now we're cooking with gas. Those scientists will probably spend years trying to figure out the name of that thing. I called it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, and then get this, they made a second one. Just when you thought all the good ideas had already been done, this one goes and blows my mind. Get ready for the fanciest patent I've ever filed. I'm pretty sure they did that just to impress me. Secret, it worked big time. Anyway, can't wait to see what they make tomorrow. Maybe I'll show them where the canned food and matches are, if they survive that long.